Right, so the truth is you know how to become a millionaire, but for some reason you're not. And so in this specific video we are going to diagnose on what's the issue here. And so 100% I'm absolutely confident that you know how to become a millionaire and successful, because it is a specific principle, a specific model that you have learned all the way from primary school to secondary school, all the way to higher education. And so let's talk about this principle. We are going to talk about Maslow's hierarchy. And you have heard about his hierarchy many, many times before, right? And so for this specific video, I'm going to make it absolutely simple, and we will diagnose where you are currently standing. And I promise you that once you have basically fixed and improved yourself layer by layer, then you will have and realize eventually your goal, and that is, for example, to become a millionaire. Let's just put money. Let's talk about the first layer. In most cases, I assume if you guys are watching this video, you have already served this layer, and that is because biological principle, imperatives. And that's basically because in today's modern society, you are already equipped with this layer. Biological imperatives include stuff like sleep, food, nutrition, general wealth and well-being. And so for most of you guys, you've probably already satisfied this layer. I assume you guys sleep well, you guys eat to some extent well. I assume you guys are the mediocre and you have already accomplished this layer. So congratulations. Now the second layer is about safety and security. And so if you are a student right now, or fresh grad, or just about to enter the corporate world, you are probably struggling right here. Because I'm not only talking about the physical and psychological idea of safety, right? Feeling, like you're safe and everything is fine. But I'm talking about specifically your finances, right? And so if you are obviously a student or you're about to start your first job, obviously your finances are all over the place. And not to mention that from birth, you are pre-programmed to have the entire concept of money the other way around. Because very early on, primary school, secondary school, we learned that money is evil, that the capitalist system is, an engine against our economy, or we learn all these sorts of different ideas of money, which is basically, fundamentally speaking, the other way around. And so in other words, you are maybe not understanding what finances means, and two, maybe you don't have it aligned. And that can be in correlation to job security. So let's just put it there. And so in other words, if you're struggling about your finances, right, if you don't have a job or you're currently not doing so well, then it's hard for you to transcend to the next layers. And so the same applies for your biological imperatives, by the way. If for some reason your sleep's not intact, your wealth or health is not doing so well, you have, maybe you weigh 100 kilos too much, for example, then obviously you cannot go to the next level without satisfying the first layers. And so I just assume from the very beginning that your biological imperatives are all set. Let's just assume that for now. But let's just assume that your finances or your job security is not intact. And to be honest, that is absolutely fine. But the issue is that you cannot focus on, let's say the third layer is love and well-being, or just call it love and relationships. So if your finances, and this is where the issue is, if your finances and your job security is not, properly aligned, and then you want to focus on top of that on your relationship with your girlfriend who's, toxic, how is that going to work? Because you have too many layers of complexities that you won't even be able to solve, right? And so my point is that before you decide to focus or fix or improve your relationship, make sure that you have these 2 layers already set, right? And so once your financial statements are stable, or your salary is fine, and you feel secure and physically safe to some extent, let's then talk about relationship, right? So let's say we have this and this checked. Now, for a lot of people, I assume you guys are young, you probably struggle with this. Because even for me, until now, I'm probably still learning and struggling about this specific area, right? And for a lot of people, this specific area is a gray area, and that will perhaps, who knows, extend until you are 30 plus, 40 plus. It doesn't really matter because it doesn't correlate to the age. And this entire Maslow hierarchy, if you read the literature from Maslow, is actually quite fluid, meaning so just because you have, settled these 2 layers and suddenly you focus on your love relationship means that these 2 don't come back anymore. That's usually not the case. The hierarchy, again, is very fluid, so meaning sometimes you struggle with your biological imperatives, and then you have to go back down a layer, and then suddenly you have issues at the top, and then you have to go back down again. So the point is the whole hierarchy is fluid, so don't understand this in such a rigid way, if that makes sense. And so when it comes to love and relationships, this is very important for you to settle, because the next 2 layers, spoiler alert, is a very important marker, a determining marker for your success. As I mentioned in the beginning of this video, to be a millionaire, for example. And so let's talk about love and relationship. Now, I'm not asking you guys at a young age to do these 2 things. I'm not asking you guys to, 1, get married very early. Like, I'm not literally asking you just because Julian said to, satisfy the 3rd layer of the Maslow's hierarchy, that now you have to suddenly marry. That's not the case. And number 2, I'm not asking you guys to basically date every single week just to, satisfy this layer. What I'm asking for you guys to do is very specific, which is the following: to understand that your relationship has to align to your long-term vision, or let's just call your long-term plans, in terms of your career, for example. And so you don't have to be in a relationship for the person to be aligned to the long-term plans. Now, let me explain. You can have a girlfriend that you are, perhaps not married with, and as long as she is aligned to your long-term plans, and I'm not only your long-term plans, I mean like both of you guys mutually agree on this, then this is absolutely fine, right? And so a lot of you guys might think this is perhaps very controversial, but this is the way I learned it and the way I personally experienced it. And as I mentioned earlier, this is a gray area which I'm learning and still experimenting, so bear with me for this one. But the way I see it, personally speaking, is that whoever, type of relationship you build, whether it's 1 person or 3 person or even 10 person, as long as they align to your long-term plans, it should still be okay, right? And so the issue is, I see a lot of guys, they would, for example, they see a video of, Andrew Tate or some hyper masculine dude, and then they decide to have 3, 4, 5 or 6 girlfriends. And the issue is that the idea per se is not wrong, but the problem is it doesn't align with the long-term plans, right? And so if your long-term plan is, for example, to start a business on consulting or a product business, and to start that business is highly complicated because you have to spend a lot of time and energy. And so if time and energy is an expensive currency for you to be successful in your business, having 5 girlfriends will take away these 2 currencies. I'll repeat that again. If you are a person who's seeking for whatever reason, a patriarchy, you like to have, not patriarchy, polygamy. You're searching for, 3, 4, 5, 6 different type of relationships. It is fine, but if you're sacrificing too much of your time or energy for your business, it's not okay. Because obviously you're aiming for this, and it's going to be your specific priority because I'll explain it in just a few moments now. But for now, just understand that in order for you to satisfy the specific layer, you have to find a specific person, and it's just biologically hardwired like that. You don't have a choice. You do need to, mate, or at least, mutually connect with someone on a different type of level. But you have to satisfy this layer in a manner that will agree to your long-term plans. Right. So that was a bit complicated to understand, but I hope you guys get it, because I tried to basically explain this as simple as possible. And so once you have satisfied these 3 layers, you will move to something called self-esteem. And so the majority of people who actually made it and are hyper successful, they are actually stuck in this stage. And for some reason, you see that with entrepreneurs who suddenly travel around the world and they get depressed, or you see politicians doing the same thing, or business people like continuously creating the same thing and just not really developing or transcending. And so this is the issue. So self-esteem talks not only about confidence, but it talks about specific stuff like your happiness. Happiness is one. And self-esteem also talks about your reputation and your status, or in other words, the way you see yourself. And so a lot of, you see these high successful people, some of them, which you maybe not like, and the issue is they keep chasing after this. They keep chasing after reputation and status, and for those reasons, you see how that reflects the decision-making processes when it comes to the businesses. And so basically, the issue is it puts you in like a rabbit hole. So in other words, you keep circling, right? You keep chasing after the same thing about status and reputation, and you don't eventually even reach the stage. And only a single few actually enter this stage, because this stage is eventually transcendence. And transcendence is, to some extent, something I don't understand because I haven't reached that layer yet. But transcendence is basically you doing something meaningful in your life, right? And trust me, it's much more nuanced than that. It's much more deeper than that, as how I'm basically defining it. But doing something meaningful is, the way I see it, how you contribute to the society and to the world. And it's not, as simple as, donating to charity, but it's how you actually position yourself in this life of yours, and how you build your legacy, and how you change people's life. And so transcendence is actually a huge thing. But again, as I mentioned earlier, if you for some reason you have satisfied these 3 layers, and now you're just in this rabbit hole of constantly, chasing after status and reputation, going clubbing, or posting on Instagram how successful you are, and posting all your watches and your supercars, like, you'll be stuck in this rabbit hole. And so eventually you won't be able to reach this layer. And I promise you, and this is from what I read, this is not from what I experience, transcendence is perhaps for a lot of people what happiness actually is. Like true happiness, not the emotional state, but the joy of actually fulfilling your life. And so this is quite deep, and I want you guys to reach this stage, because if you reach this stage, you eventually become the person that will allow you to become a millionaire. Because transcendence is not you becoming millionaire. Transcendence is you actually contributing and making your life more meaningful, and becoming a millionaire is actually a result of that. So I'll repeat that. Millionaire is a byproduct of you transcending into the person you want to be. And in order for you to transcend into the person that you want to be, you have to satisfy all of these 1, 2, 3, 4 layers. You have to understand every single parameters, rules, and contributing factors that make up these specific layers. And once you have reached the stage, euphoria. No, then you'll hopefully find happiness. And so I hope that you perhaps find it. And with that being said, I will close the video the way that is.